Hi, welcome to the Apryse Spreadsheet Editing Release webinar, where we're excited to unveil our brand new editing capabilities for spreadsheets in our Web SDK. First, let's do some introductions. My name's Conrad. I'm a product marketing manager here at Apryse, and I work closely with the Apryse SDKs.
Hi, I'm Haley. I'm a product manager on the Web SDK team focusing on our Spreadsheet Editor product.
And who is Apryse, you might be wondering, if this is your first time at one of our webinars and you're not an existing customer, we hope to get you. We deliver innovative solutions for document processing needs. So if you're creating, editing, merging, extracting, if you're working with business documents in any capacity, we have a secure software development kit with a solution for you, where you can implement it directly into your application without external dependencies. We support over 20,000 companies, from pre-revenue startups to Fortune 100. And hey, look at some of these exciting names down here, am I right? IBM, DocuSign, very cool. It could be you. But anyway, let's jump into our agenda today to talk about this exciting new spreadsheet editing capability. So we're going to start off with what the Apryse Web SDK is, some of the different components that make it up, and then we're going to jump into some of those traditional spreadsheet pain points and why we built Spreadsheet Editor as a response to these pain points. Then we're going to move into Spreadsheet Editor's capabilities, as well as some of the real-world use cases that we're supporting. And then after that, because we're going to do a bunch of telling, we're also going to do some show, and we're going to end it off with a demo and a conversation around what the future roadmap of this product looks like. So starting off with what the Apryse Web SDK is. Well, it's this JavaScript toolkit that's broken up into a few different components here. You can see those in the top right. There's DocX Editor, Spreadsheet Editor, and Web Viewer, which is currently covered up by my face, so we'll call it Conrad Viewer for the moment. But it is this set of viewing and editing components that's going to allow you to work on PDFs, DocX files, XLSX files, as well as a number of other business file types. And because we've built this as a unified Web SDK, it's going to reuse components across the different types of editors. So WebViewer is a canvas-based editor, meaning that content is unstructured, floating around, how you would expect to see it within a PDF. But DocX and Spreadsheet Editor are these DOM-based editors that allow you to edit content directly within it as if it was a processor. And these different modules are using the same front-end components, meaning if you were to move between WebViewer and DocX Editor, it's going to reduce the load required to make that work. But also, using the same components means that we're going to reuse a lot of the same iconography, it's going to be the same design language, and it's going to benefit from having some of that overall accessibility design. Why did we do this? Well, we wanted to reduce the reliance on different end user licenses, whether that's for Acrobat, we love Adobe, but for Acrobat, for Microsoft Office, for any of the alternative end user editing softwares out there. But also, we wanted to create a great user experience within the browser. And because this is a client-side library, that means when you're loading any of these file types, it's going to load directly within the client, within the browser itself. There's not going to be an external server that is streaming that document information to the client. It's going to happen on device, which is going to reduce server load for you, and it's going to make sure that there's no inefficiencies. It's going to be a very consistent user experience. And because of that, this also works across browsers. It's very easy to get started with the Web SDK. Highly encourage you, if you have not already tried to build a proof of concept with your application, to go check out our documentation and get started today. It is accessibility compliant with WCAG 2.2 AA guidelines. This is very exciting. There's lots of accessibility regulations out there that require web applications to be WCAG 2.0 or 2.1 AA compliant. We are 2.2 AA compliant, meaning that we exceed a lot of accessibility regulations out there. Recently, there was the European Accessibility Act that just came into effect in June. This requires most businesses that engage in commerce with European Union clients to meet WCAG 2.1 AA guidelines. So we're starting to see accessibility requirements move from public sector to private sector as these regulations continue to mount. But it's not just good to meet these regulations to meet a more diverse set of users. Of course, it's great to expand your potential user base. But a lot of these accessibility development guidelines are really centered around good design principle. So if you're developing for users with low vision, you're making sure that you're meeting appropriate contrast ratios. If you're developing for users that have any sort of accessibility technology requirements, then you want to make sure that you have a user interface that is easy to navigate. And so we have great design principles that are enacted across our web viewer, spreadsheet editor, and docx editor. The web SDK is great for everyone to use, is what I'm trying to say. And of course, finally, it's secure by design. Going back to client side, the user interactions will live on machine, on device, in the browser. There's no sensitive data that is going to be exposed to Apryse. You own these data workflows within your application. So there's no exposing, which is fantastic. Let's break it down into these three components here. So we'll start with WebViewer on the right-hand side. WebViewer is the backbone of the Web SDK, and it's going to provide a very consistent viewing and somewhat editing experience across various document types, including PDFs, images, even Microsoft Office files, CAD files, and advanced image files. And it's going to have all of those advanced PDF editing capabilities, such as redaction, digital signatures, form filling, text editing, image editing. We even have comparison, so you can look at semantic comparison between two versions of the same document. But what it is not is a word processor. So even though you can view various Microsoft Office files, whether that's Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's not going to be like a traditional word processor. So a couple of years ago, we ended up introducing our docx editor on the left-hand side here. And that allowed users to work within the Web SDK as if they were in Microsoft Word itself. You could edit it, go line by line, change formatting, track changes. You had control over the layout, and we've been continuing to iterate on this technology ever since then. And of course, you can save that docx file either as a docx file or export it as a PDF. A few months ago, we introduced spreadsheet viewing, and this allowed users to view spreadsheets as intended. So as I mentioned before, you could view a spreadsheet within WebViewer, but it meant that a lot of information about the spreadsheet wasn't necessarily accessible because spreadsheets by design are inherently quite different. The canvas that a spreadsheet is rendered on is going to be thousands of rows in length. In fact, an Excel file has a row limit of roughly 1,050,000 rows. And of course, that doesn't even include the columns, which just span out for forever. And within all of those columns and rows are cells. And you had to be able to click on those cells in order to see information such as formulas, see some of the more advanced formatting, see the grid. And so we came out with spreadsheet viewing as a means to solve some of these pain points. In fact, it's really good to understand where some of the information within Excel files originates from. There's this classic case of JP Morgan Chase back in 2012 incurring a $6 billion loss as a result of an error in copying information over from one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet. Essentially, one of their traders was valuing the risk of various corporate loans. And in calculating this risk model, he had copy pasted data from one spreadsheet to another spreadsheet, and he failed to copy over some of the riskier loans that were in the market. And as such, he ended up undervaluing the risk, and he ended up selling or encouraging the sale of credit default swaps from JP Morgan Chase for very cheap. They flooded the market with credit default swaps. A lot of other traders took notice to this, realized that their risk assessment was off, and they ended up purchasing a bunch of credit default swaps. And just 6 to 9 months later, the price of credit default swaps had risen so much that it was very expensive for JP Morgan Chase to hold on to these positions. And because it was expensive, they had to buy those positions back at a higher price than what they had originally sold them for because they were hemorrhaging cash. Because of this, they ended up incurring a $6 billion loss as a result of this in just 6 to 9 months. If they had someone to go in there and verify this manual workflow and say, hey, there was a number of cells that were selected from this document and there's a number of cells pasted in this document and that number of cells didn't add up, they might have been able to calculate that this was not the right investment to make. This is really a $6 billion piece of software here. JP Morgan Chase probably does not assess risk like that anymore, but if they were to assess risk like that, hopefully they would be using Apryse's Spreadsheet Editor here, which now has editing capabilities, so you can't just view those cells. You'd be able to edit, copy and paste over the cells that were missing from that previous spreadsheet. So let's jump into some of those traditional spreadsheet handling pain points. Spreadsheet software has actually been around for a very long time. In fact, the first electronic spreadsheet program was VisiCalc, and that came out in 1979, which is almost 50 years ago. That's a long time. And Microsoft Excel came out back in 1985. And throughout the life cycle of this technology, we still see a lot of pain points that really haven't gone away over the course of its lifespan. The first one being download and upload friction. So what do I mean by that? Well, lots of firms have issue with version control. They'll have a centralized document management system or a portal where spreadsheets can be accessed. Users will download them onto their machine. They'll make changes. They might re-upload them. They might not. But you'll have different versions of the same file that are floating around, and it's hard to tell if the file that's part of the centralized resource, the document management system, or the portal, is actually the current version of it. It creates certain sensitivity and compliance issues. Broken formatting and formulas. Everyone's had experience with this before where you're loading a spreadsheet. I mean, we see this right in the middle of the slide here. The hashtag value ! Or hashtag ref ! It's very frustrating when spreadsheets are originating from elsewhere and everyone's using their own spreadsheet editor and different versions are floating around, and you're not really sure which one you should be using, but you can't see the values or the formulas. There's compliance red flags that exist as well. If you have these different versions that are downloaded to your device, then you might be exposing a data leakage. Just because something is on a company device doesn't mean that is in line with your data security policies. Having something that's centralized where you can't download the Excel file because you have downloading disabled would be really beneficial in ensuring that version control, but also data leakage is not an issue. We're starting to see some reduced tooling support for web applications that are incorporating an Excel viewer, a JavaScript Excel viewer. For example, Microsoft's Office Online Server is being deprecated, or rather end-of-lifed, later this year in October. And Office Online Server allows you to take Office 2016 or Office 2019 and put it into a web application. And this is great for businesses that have on-prem requirements. But it is being end-of-lifed later this year, and it's not being replaced with a modern version of Microsoft Office technology. So if you have certain security risks with having unmaintained software as part of your solution, then you're going to have to migrate away from Office Online Server. User experience, it's just good product design if you have everyone staying within your application. Imagine that you are in a legal portal and you are looking at some case and you're looking at some exhibit that's tied to it, like a list of damages, and you click on it and it opens up a desktop application, or it pulls you into a new tab, or maybe it even opens it as a PDF file and you're not even viewing it within a spreadsheet viewer or editor. It's going to create some extra mental load for someone who's navigating back and forth from the application that is your web application and the other application that they're going into, and you can't control some of the versioning around it. And it might lead to some of the various issues that we're talking about here, the download and upload friction, the compliance red flags. So there's all sorts of different risks that are at play. So we actually built Spreadsheet Editor to address all of these different issues. But we didn't just build it for that. We built it because we wanted to build a great Excel-like user experience to tack on to the Web SDK. We knew that our customers cared about in-app user retention, and they had people who were looking at Excel files and they were editing docx files, but wouldn't it be great if they had the ability to also edit Excel files within their web app? We have this modular accessible UI, and so if you're already a user of WebViewer or you're already a user of docx editor, then you're familiar with customizing the UI, enabling and disabling various elements, moving stuff around, and creating a very bespoke user experience that's tailored to your application. You don't need all of the bells and whistles present if you have a very intentional user experience. And we've always been geared towards creating this spreadsheet specific tool set. And as we can see, it is now available. There will be a showcase demo link in the chat for you guys to check out later on. So let's talk about some of these capabilities that you're able to perform with Spreadsheet Editor. Well, you can render Excel files with an Excel-like user interface. This is what I have been talking about this entire time. Excel actually has an esports league that's kind of built around it. So, we were thinking maybe we'd get our Excel editor out there and, maybe we'd sign a team. It'd kind of be like a Formula One situation. But we're just going to start with solving, global document processing issues first and see if we can migrate there. But you're able to format cells, you're able to change text size, color, the background of cells, merge cells together, center information. You're able to edit and insert formulas, basic math, date, time, stats, and of course load formulas from other Excel files without breaking them. In case you didn't know, actually Excel formulas are the most used programming language in the world. It's technically a programming language because it's Turing complete. It can perform any sort of formula or any sort of equation that a programming language is able to do. So this is technically us launching a IDE that your CFO would already be familiar with. So yeah, we're actually launching our own IDE here, which is pretty sweet. But I mean, on top of that massive accomplishment from us, we have the insertion, the deletion, the rearranging of rows, columns. You're able to have formulas that go cross sheets. You're able to navigate between multiple sheets, and you can export spreadsheets as Excel with all of your edits intact. This is great if you have a centralized document management system or it's attached to a portal where you want everything centralized. It's very secure. Yeah. So we're supporting some real world use cases with this, such as compliance portals, banking software, financial reporting systems, and some of these legacy offline Office users that need to replace their systems later this year. Compliance portals, this is very popular in insurance, pharma, and related industries. Anyone who needs to access spreadsheets within a online company portal and make very minor edits. They have the formulas that they already rely on. They need to just update a couple cells of information to generate a new output without downloading the files or breaking any of the formatting. So if you have sensitivity around some of your Excel files that you don't want any edits made to, compliance portals would be one of those strong use cases for that. Banking software, JP Morgan Chase. They could have probably benefited from having more team members looking at the versions of the Excel file that one trader was using to calculate risk. But yes, you can have teams easily review Excel-based proposals securely from within a browser. also makes it simple too if you have client facing situations where you want a portal where clients are not downloading that information from you. This is the same for financial reporting here. So modifying a spreadsheet that has large data sets attached to it without requiring tool switching and any of that sensitive information potentially being leaked. Uh, we know that IP is worth a lot to financial institutions, so it's important to keep it all centralized and not download it onto user machines. And of course, these legacy offline Office Online server replacements that will have to end up being enacted, unfortunately, as that technology is being end of lifed. So if you are an existing Office Online server customer, consider some of the security risks that come with having an unmaintained Excel editing experience within your web application, uh, and potentially switching over to a maintained version, such as our own. But this is a lot of talking about Excel editing. I think that this is a great point to jump off and show you guys exactly what we're working with. Kicking it over to Haley.
Awesome. Now let's get into the demo. So we have this drop down in the top right corner here. I'm going to switch from viewing into edit mode, and you can see the UI has changed a little bit, and we have some great new features and functionality that I will walk you through. So to start off, we have this grouping of 3 buttons here that are clipboard operations. So that includes cut, copy, as well as paste. So I'm just going to copy or cut this piece of data over into column J and copy the street address over here as well, just to demonstrate those features. Awesome, we moved them and copied them. Next, we have our font family drop down, so you can change the font from Arial, maybe just something kind of fun and kooky like Comic Sans, or back to Arial. We'll keep it in Arial. And you can also adjust the font size if you want to make it smaller or bring it back to kind of that middle size. That's a nice way to kind of edit and customize kind of the text appearances in your spreadsheet. You can also bold, italicize, underline, and strike through the text as well, and then kind of just click through to kind of set it how you like. Our next editing functionality for text color has this nice little flyout with different colors. You can also click the plus icon. You can type in a certain hex or RGB code if you have a certain color that fits your brand, or just kind of drag and drop into this new color and it pops up into the menu as well. And then you can also delete and reset to default. Then the next one is the background color. So that'll just change the cell background color. Can kind of go through some different options there, or just reset to default. And if you want to see fewer options, you can toggle on the show less and show more. And then kind of moving forward, we have our text alignment and cell alignment options. So you can do kind of right aligned, center aligned text, align the text to the top of the cell, but I'd like to keep it in the middle. That looks nice. We'll go with that. Our next button here includes some cell adjustments where we can insert a column to the left or to the right and insert rows above and below. And then we can also delete them with that functionality. And then we have our border controls where you can apply kind of different border colors, border styles, and if you want to have just a border on the outside, all borders, top, bottom, etc. Similar to Excel, I've applied borders all around. Then we also have our merging and unmerging. So you can see that I've merged that into a single cell, and unmerged works seamlessly as well. And next we have this grouping of number formatting options. So I'm going to go over to this set of numbers that I have in the spreadsheet, click the currency button, and that took my just unformatted 23 to $23. And then similarly, the percentage button took my 0.745 to 74.50%. And if I want to customize how many decimals I'm seeing, I can decrease the decimal, and decreasing takes 74.5 to 75%, or I can go back to a more precise number with 74.5. And then we have this more options menu that kind of has this flyout here with some additional formatting options where you can change to accounting or financial formatting, as well as like things like date and time. So that is kind of the different UI controls. We also have the formula bar here. So if I'm typing directly within a cell, you can see that it shows up in the formula bar. I can also type in the formula bar and it shows up in the cell as you'd expect. But I'd like to add a formula. So I could just type in the equals symbol within the formula bar. If I start typing A, I can see which A formulas are supported within Spreadsheet Editor and a quick description of what that is. But I know I'd like to add the sum formula and do a quick calculation of W2 to W14, 13, let's say. And now we just have a formula here, which has added up these numbers right below it. Just as a quick note for our formula support, so in this release, we offer support for over 250 common formulas, and that includes basic mathematical formulas like sum and subtotal, date and time functions, as well as statistical formulas such as average and median. So definitely a wide range of formulas there. And we'll go into the roadmap after the demo, but if there are any specific formulas you use that aren't currently supported, just let us know. Definitely happy to explore how we might add some additional formulas that you're already using. And then that's kind of the new additions at the top of the UI. Coming down to the bottom of the UI, you can see we have our sheet within the workbook. You can also add new sheets to the workbook. And then in this more options menu, you can rename them. So I'm going to call this an invoice for June. And if I decide I don't need that many sheets in my workbook, I'm just going to delete them and confirm it with this modal that has popped up. And then I can kind of toggle back and forth between the sheets. Similar functionality to Excel, of course. And I also want to note we do have a number of new Spreadsheet Editor APIs for edit mode, and those are detailed in our docs. So that was a quick overview of the new editing functionality for Spreadsheet Editor. All right, and now back to our kind of release timeline here for Spreadsheet Editor. So as a refresher, in Q1, we released View Mode. View Mode provided the functionality to load XLSX files and retain supported content and formatting, as well as the ability to navigate and view content through multiple sheets and view formulas within a cell. And in Q2, we built upon the View Mode release with our awesome Edit Mode. So that includes all the amazing things that we just went over in the demo, such as cell formatting, going through the different formulas and functions, manipulating our data, and styling cells and applying styles to text. In the future, we have different things planned on our roadmap, such as search and replace, as well as offering some enhanced viewing and editing capabilities, such as image insertion, and comments are something that we want to bring to Spreadsheet Editor as well. But of course, if there's any feedback for workflows that you need within your spreadsheet documents, just let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback. And with that, that concludes our webinar.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Please follow us on socials. We have X, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn here. You could also search it up on Google if you don't want to use one of these quick scan QR codes. But more importantly, try it out for yourself. We have the showcase demo. So go to showcase.apryse.com or Google Apryse Showcase, and you will be able to try Excel editing out yourself today within our live demo environment. And so with that, that concludes today's webinar. Thank you so much for attending.